The chilling implications of Russia's new nuclear command structure have sparked global concern. Reports have emerged that Russian President Vladimir Putin has made a dramatic shift in Russia's nuclear policy, delegating decision-making authority for nuclear strikes to field commanders under certain conditions. This controversial move raises grave concerns about the potential for miscalculation, unauthorized launches, or deliberate escalation. Against this backdrop, a chilling what-if scenario highlights the stakes. Imagine a Tsar Bomba attack on Washington, D.C., a terrifying possibility brought to life through a simulation created by nuclearsecrecy.com. The visualization reveals the catastrophic consequences of such an event, underscoring the urgent need to understand and address the risks of decentralized nuclear authority. The new Russian nuclear doctrine reportedly allows lower-ranking officers to order nuclear strikes in situations where communication with the Kremlin is compromised. This decentralization marks a dangerous departure from traditional command and control protocols. Experts warn of three primary risks: human error, miscommunication, and the possibility of rogue or unauthorized launches. Field commanders, often younger and less experienced, may lack the comprehensive intelligence and strategic perspective needed for such a grave decision. High-stress combat scenarios amplify the likelihood of rapid, ill-informed choices based on incomplete or incorrect information. And with more individuals granted access to launch authority, the risk of sabotage or rogue action grows exponentially. Nuclear policy expert Pavel Podvig described this shift as, quote, a potentially disastrous gamble, warning that, quote, lowering the threshold for nuclear use significantly heightens the risk of escalation in an already volatile geopolitical climate. To underscore these risks, consider the potential impact of a Tsar Bomba strike on Washington, D.C. The Tsar Bomba, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever tested, yields 50 megatons of TNT, more than 3,000 times the force of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The simulation vividly illustrates the layers of destruction. At the heart of the strike, everything within a 2-mile radius of the detonation would be instantly vaporized. Iconic landmarks like the US Capitol, the White House, and the Pentagon would cease to exist. The temperature at ground zero would be hotter than the surface of the sun, reducing infrastructure to rubble and leaving a massive crater. Stretching outward 6 miles from the epicenter, the primary blast radius would flatten buildings, ignite fires, and leave behind a landscape of devastation. Casualties would number in the hundreds of thousands. Survivors in this zone would face life-threatening injuries from flying debris, collapsing structures, and severe burns. Thermal radiation from the blast would extend up to 30 miles, encompassing large portions of Virginia, Maryland, and the greater Washington metropolitan area. Third-degree burns would afflict anyone exposed, and fires would erupt over vast areas, compounding the destruction. Perhaps most terrifying is the fallout zone, stretching hundreds of miles northward due to a steady southerly wind. Radioactive particles would drift into cities like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Rochester, New York. Millions would face lethal radiation exposure, leading to acute radiation sickness, cancer, and long-term genetic damage. Cities caught in this fallout zone could become uninhabitable for decades. The devastation wouldn't stop at physical destruction. The economic and societal impacts would be catastrophic. Critical government functions, emergency response capabilities, and civilian infrastructure would be paralyzed. The United States economy would face collapse as financial markets disintegrate, supply chains fail, and millions are displaced. Globally, the United States' role as a leader would be severely weakened, creating a power vacuum with dire consequences. As geopolitical tensions simmer, particularly over conflicts in Ukraine and NATO's eastern flank, the spectre of nuclear engagement looms larger. Putin's decision to decentralize nuclear authority may be intended to project strength, but it signals a disturbing willingness to use nuclear weapons as a deterrent or retaliatory tool. Russian officials have even boasted about the readiness to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in regional conflicts, lowering the barriers to their actual use. This shift in nuclear policy raises unsettling questions about global security. The decentralization of nuclear command increases the risk of conflict and undermines diplomatic efforts to prevent escalation. With decision-making authority spread across multiple individuals, the potential for misinterpretation or miscalculation grows exponentially. For United States residents, the possibility of a nuclear strike, whether intentional or accidental, feels more real than ever. The Tsar Bomba scenario is a harrowing reminder of what's at stake. The devastation modeled in the simulation is not just theoretical. It's a chilling illustration of the consequences of failure in nuclear command and control. This moment is a wake-up call for world leaders. Immediate action is needed to strengthen arms control agreements, establish stricter safeguards for nuclear command and control, and improve communication channels between nuclear powers. The world cannot afford to gamble with the catastrophic consequences of a nuclear misstep. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens are left with unsettling questions. What happens when the ultimate decision to launch rests not with seasoned statesmen, but with frightened commanders in the field, or even inexperienced teenaged soldiers? The Tsar Bomba model serves as a stark reminder of the stakes, urging humanity to do everything in its power to ensure that the button is never pressed. For the latest in foreign policy and international news, subscribe to Breaking Through News on the Newsbreak app or at breakingthrough.com.